Welcome into another edition of the Gig'em 24/7 Sports Podcast. We got a top 20 clash coming up this weekend in South Bend between Texas A&M and Notre Dame. Texas A&M's first big test of the week of the year after victories over UTSA and Utah State to open the season. We're thrilled to be joined by Tim O'Malley of Irish Illustrated, fresh off a bye week, an early
Yes.
bye week. We were
All right.
joking about that. Tim, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be back. Looking forward to it.
Unique schedule, as we were kind of picking off there, as we were talking about unique schedule for Notre Dame to begin the year. They play a late kind of Sunday night game in Miami. Tough result, lose by 3 points, and then have a bye week. What has been kind of maybe the mood or vibe coming off that bye week heading into Texas A&M, and with one game under their belt?
Yeah, it's funny because people always joke that Notre Dame players and coaches always say the bye week comes at a good time. Well, it did for the media because we were all tired, and I think it did for the football team because I don't know how they'd have responded playing A&M 6 days later. So that was intentional. Obviously, they set that up so they could prepare better for another hard game in week 2. They had to. It probably helps them a little bit mentally. You have to sit around and stew on the fact that you were beaten to the punch by Miami, and Notre Dame fans haven't seen that happen to an Irish team. I mean, Ohio State was just better, so they haven't seen that happen to an Irish team other than the Northern Illinois game, and that's a different world. Obviously Notre Dame's not going to be up for that like you would be Miami on a road opener. So I think that surprised Notre Dame fans the most, the way that a Marcus Freeman coach team was not the aggressor, did not take it to Miami like they did all of last year, whether they were underdogs or not. So that was the disappointment, and then I think the lingering disappointment is the Lions didn't play all that well. And when Marcus Freeman says we're an offensive and defensive line-driven program, and you lose both in your opener to Miami, that did not sit well. But it also didn't sit well with the staff, the coaching staff. So sometimes fans have a different view of it. It seems like the coaching staff had a similar view to fans and analysts.
It seems like Marcus Freeman, though, did have kind of this unfazed mindset about him. Listening to him, where is he? Kind of an early loss can either jolt you or obviously increases the stakes on a game like this. What has he kind of said about another top 20 matchup and them looking to bounce back and get on the right track?
Well, he has a pretty clear example to use from last year when you're a 4-touchdown favorite and blow all the equity you had from beating A&M in College Station. He was very calm post game. I think that's more of his fourth-year veteran coach vibe, where he thought, look, it's a 12-team playoff. We're 11. If we go 11-1, we're in this 12-team playoff quite easily, probably still hosting a home game. So everything you want is right in front of you. Right. I bet he was glad there was a bye week coming up to right the ship a little bit, to kind of work out practice, how physical he wanted to have it. He did mention yesterday, you can't go too physical. It's week 1.5. So you can't exactly put your team through the ringer just because they lost a game. So he handled it much differently than I had seen other losses, but it was also a more acceptable loss than the others. Yeah. Ohio State in prime time a couple years ago, they had 10 guys on the field. That's obviously a rough way to lose a game. Northern Illinois is the roughest way to lose a game because it's Northern Illinois. Marshall after Ohio State is a really rough way to lose a game. He started his career 0-2 at Notre Dame. So by comparison, losing on the road to now number 5 or number 6 Miami by a field goal, I mean, just look at it. They moved up by not playing. I don't think Notre Dame 3 years ago moves anywhere near number 8 without the equity they gained last year in the playoff by losing their opener. It's shocking where they are now in terms of what 1 year run can do, because people always say Notre Dame's overrated for their brand, but this is actual built up equity when you beat Georgia, when you beat Penn State, when you come back against Ohio State, when of course you beat A&M and USC during the year. So I think their program equity is at an all-time high, and it'll go right down the drain if A&M beats them, because 0-2 does not allow anybody any college football equity.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about CJ Carr, obviously heading into his second start now. That's a tough spot to make your first career start, and obviously down in Miami. What did you see out of him that you maybe liked in that game, and what are maybe the expectations for him heading into the second game?
Yeah, the first part, what we liked is he was so competitive, because we did not know that he would be able to run that effectively and that tough. He's obviously not Riley Leonard, who was a runner, but he was kind of how we all feel. He was saddled with a timid horizontal screen game plan, and we just thought, what is this? CJ Carr is known for pushing the ball down the field. He's known for testing corners one-on-one. He's known for hitting the seams, hitting the deep route, and they were just so horizontal. It was dry. At one point, I looked over at my colleague Tim Priester. I'm like, are you bored? Because I'm bored watching them play offense. And you just don't think of that with Notre Dame and Jeremiah Love and bring in a vertical attack. So I think his toughness when they got behind in that environment to rally them, to be able to run the ball, it was sadly necessary that he ran the ball. I don't think that was just like, here's a good trick. It was, we have to run the ball right now with CJ Carr. I don't think you can do that all year like you do with Riley Leonard, because Riley Leonard was a linebacker that could throw the ball, and CJ Carr's a quarterback that can run it. Like, you couldn't hurt Riley Leonard. You needed like a plan to hurt Riley Leonard. He was a monster. So they're going to have to protect Carr a little. The second part of your question, my expectations, I had a great question for my Monday column. Is there more pressure on Carr now because you're 0-1, you come home against just as good of a defense? Mike Elko's third year against Notre Dame. If things go south, and by that I just mean 7-0 with 5 minutes to go in the second quarter, does Notre Dame, do the fans get antsy? Do you start to hear stuff that is booing Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator, for 2 weeks in a row, where CJ Carr feels that? Like, there's a different pressure at home. Obviously, it's harder to perform because you can't even hear a snap count in Miami, but there's a different type of internal pressure at home, and so it's going to be interesting to see how CJ Carr handles that. Obviously, a fast start negates all that pressure.
No doubt. We're listening. We've got Tim O'Malley with us from Irish Illustrated. If you listen to us on the audio side of this, we'll be right back after a quick break. We got plenty more to get to with Tim. Tim, you mentioned Jeremiah Love, and I think there was a lot of kind of chatter and talk from people kind of looking at his carry number in week 1 against Miami. And Mike Elko was asked about it on Monday during his availability and kind of joked, I expect Jeremiah Love to be, a heavy factor with this upcoming Saturday. But if you go back to even last year, like, his carries seemed to go up and down a little bit. And some games he was in the single digits, some he was higher around 16. Is that just kind of the way they've looked to kind of navigate a long season maybe with him? And what is kind of the plan for Jeremiah Love?
It definitely is how they navigate a long season, because they love Jadarian Price, who scored against A&M on a long run last year. The issue is you don't navigate Miami and A&M that way with Jeremiah Love. I think you navigate Purdue, and maybe when you get into Syracuse and Boston College and Navy, that's how you navigate Jeremiah Love's carries. But he is not a guy that expects 20 carries, because they actually recruited him with this is a genius mindset. I think all big-time programs should do it. Say, we're preparing you for the NFL. We expect you to be so good you leave after your junior year and you're not going to have any tread on your tires. And that is just a new way of looking at college football running backs. But they can do it with he and Price. I expect a healthy dose of Jeremiah Love in this game because of what happened. I thought Sean McDonough had the best line of the college football season. He had a long run and hurdled someone, and it was called back, actually. But McDonough said Jeremiah Love straight out of the witness protection program during that game. He went an hour and 20 real-world minutes without the ball, which is just, that's absolutely insane when you lose a game and you have Jeremiah Love, Jeremiah Smith and Jeremiah Love. Those are the two guys that ruin games for people. So you'll see a lot of Love. I actually think you need to see a lot of Price, because Price had 6 carries for 45 yards. It was all in one drive. They scored on that drive. He fumbled, but CJ Carr dove on it. Now, I understand if CJ Carr didn't dive on it, that's the end of the world, because you fumbled at the 2-yard line. But 6 carries, 45 yards, led the team. He never saw the ball again. I mean, he's a senior and he's proven. I think we use the word equity. That guy needs some equity in that he won't fumble again. Obviously, maybe he was fumbling all of August and we have no idea. But I feel like it's almost spiting yourself to take out Price when he's the guy that's rolling along, and he's the guy that averages 7 yards a carry.
Yeah, Tim, just looking at that wide receiver room, who are some names to maybe know there as well?
So I sent this to Carter for your Insiders preview today. Don't look at the box score from Miami because so Jaden Greathouse had kind of what we just thought. He's a Westlake, Texas grad, played with Cade Klubnik in high school. And we thought he was going to have a breakout year as a sophomore last year. Well, he didn't until the end. However, semifinals and finals, he had 13 catches, 14 targets, 9 first downs, 235 yards, and 3 touchdowns against Penn State and Ohio State. That's not Army and Navy. So when you break out against Penn State and Ohio State, we expect big things. 3 targets, no catches. They're going to look for Jaden Greathouse because he's a good player. If you can beat Ohio State secondary and Penn State secondary, you can beat most secondaries. Malachi Fields came in from Virginia. He's a 5th year. He is the type of guy that could go pro, but needed probably a little higher profile offense to help his draft stock. So he's a big 5th year guy. He fumbled his first catch versus Miami, but bounced back and made 2 really nice highlight catches during the game. So he is number 0 to watch. And then Jordan Faison will get the ball a lot. He's number 6, very small receiver. He's a lacrosse player that was a walk-on 2 years ago, but the second they put him in, he scored a touchdown against Louisville in prime time. So since then, he's kind of been every Notre Dame fan's favorite smaller Irish player, but he's no longer a walk-on. He's a special teamer, and you'll see him at wide receiver. So those are the main 3. They also brought in Will Pauling, number 2 from Wisconsin. He was not targeted in the game, but he was named a team captain as a graduate transfer wide receiver, which is just not something you think of at Notre Dame. Like, obviously, Sam Hartman and Riley Leonard were named team captains. They're the 23-year-old quarterbacks. Will Pauling came in, and he's basically a 3rd, 4th receiver, and he was named team captain. So they expect something out of Will Pauling too. And you probably won't go too much deeper than those 4 against A&M.
Chris Ash, got to ask you about him as well.
Yep.
Mike Elko was kind of asked about him on Monday as well. And some of the differences, I know it's only one game in, but what are maybe some of the differences between this Notre Dame defense that A&M saw last year and how they might look to defend opponents this upcoming year?
Yeah, he did 3 things wrong. One, he can't control. He wasn't Al Golden, who won the Broyles Award last year, and Notre Dame fans now absolutely love Al Golden because he was fantastic last year. Remember, they didn't love Al Golden after year 1 because the transition to a new team is not easy, and that's what Chris Ash is doing now. Now, Chris Ash, from Notre Dame fans' point of view, was kind of handed the keys to the kingdom. Here you go. Here's the 2nd best defense in the country. Go do something. They gave up 27 to Miami. I felt like their coverage broke down more in man-to-man that you just would not expect it to happen to Notre Dame. They're a really good man team. Malachi Toney's a freshman on Miami. He beat their new nickel for a touchdown. He got open on Christian Gray, who's a heck of a cover guy. He had a pick against A&M last year to steal the game. It was Daniels, I keep wanting to say Jaden Daniels, but it was Daniels had a stop and go on Leonard Moore, who was not beat at all ever last year for a touchdown, that leaping one-handed catch I think everyone has seen. Those were all in man-to-man. And Notre Dame fans are really mad at Chris Ash for playing too much zone. Well, they were in man-to-man at least 47% of the time by our numbers. Now, it used to be like 55 under Gold, which led the country. It was Notre Dame and Purdue, and those are different types of man-to-man, obviously. Purdue's defense with 1 win and Notre Dame in the championship. But I think they were a little hard on Chris Ash because it was the perceived lack of blitzing, lack of man. I think it was just a little less man, and they probably needed to blitz more because 4 guys weren't getting home. But sometimes when you're the coordinator and the coach, your game plan is these guys can't beat us man-to-man because nobody does other than Ohio State. But then they beat you. And then you do have to adjust and go a little bit of zone. So with A&M's new receivers playing well, I think that's the number 1 matchup for me is the receivers on not only the outside but in the slot, because Carson Hobbs and an Alabama grad transfer, Devontae Smith. We always joke it's the wrong Devontae Smith to transfer into your program, but he is the starting nickel, and Carson Hobbs is his kind of trusted reserve. They both struggled against Miami. That might be the matchup that A&M looks to exploit. When you see number 15, Leonard Moore, on the boundary, when they lost Benjamin Morrison last year, who was a Thorpe Award finalist the year before, they got better with true freshman Leonard Moore. So he is fantastic. To see him get beat on a double move was shocking. I think they're going to go after Christian Gray and the nickel quite a bit for A&M.
Yeah, no doubt. Obviously, hard to do that. Hard to replace a guy like Benjamin Morrison and what they did there. Marcel Reed, obviously, Notre Dame didn't see him last year. They got Connor Wigman. What do you think the plan will be like to try to stop Marcel Reed? And are there maybe comparable guys that they went against maybe last year, mobile guys that and how they might look to attack Marcel Reed?
Yeah, it's a great question because the whole playoff run was all immobile guys. If you think about Indiana, Georgia was not, well, even if they would have had Carson back, it would have been an immobile quarterback. But Penn State with Aller is not a mobile guy. Will Howard beat Notre Dame with his legs, but that was a surprise. That's not a mobile runner you're thinking of. So it's been a while since they have faced a really mobile quarterback. Maava, USC, beat them more through the air. What needs to happen for Notre Dame, and I did answer Carter for this on the preview, is their outside corners have to lock down because that will allow Notre Dame to have an extra player to kind of contain Marcel Reed. They should be pretty disciplined in their pass rush. The issue is, of course, if they don't get there with 4 and A&M has a really good offensive line, then they have to bring a 5th and you start doing stunts and twists, and that gets you out of your pass rushing lanes. So Marcel Reed can be tough there. They do have very good athletic linebackers. Kingston Viliamu-Asa isn't even listed as a starter, but he is their best linebacker as a sophomore. I think they match up well with Reed in that regard. This is one of those things where Notre Dame fans would have so much less angst because they would trust Al Golden to come up with something to confuse Marcel Reed. So now it's Chris Ash. Chris Ash has to come up with something, because if you watch the first 2 games, you know who's in control of that A&M offense. It's actually shocking how much even the running game is relying on Reed. I thought maybe now I think they might start pounding at Notre Dame, because that seems to be maybe a weakness in the middle.
No doubt. Tim, great stuff. Thank you again for all the insight. Enjoy this weekend. And we'll have you on again soon. Thanks again.
You're right. At A&M fans, you have 80 degrees daytime and 65 degrees nighttime, so you could not be welcome to better football weather for this time in South Bend.
Man, I know a lot of them are planning to check out the Cubs game and on Friday.
Oh, right. That's great.
Should be a fun weekend over in South Bend. Thanks again for all the insight. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Andrew.